Hello guys, we're back and we are going to work on today. I just painted the background of this little white board to cover up what was on there before. We're going to work on a beach scene. Again, practicing how to put in clouds, little water, the beach, and some wispy plants growing. Something real simple, and we're gonna walk through it. So let's get our palette ready. I think that's dry enough. I hope everybody's doing really good. If you're liking my videos, please hit that like button and subscribe. And please leave me comments. I would be more than happy to hear any suggestions you might have for future paintings. And of course, you know, we want to keep it in mind it's beginner painting, so simple things, and that would be great. All right, let's get some white paint on the palette. This is going to be our sky. Just a slight amount of blue. It's totally up to you what blue you want to use. This would be a good time to use even a turquoise. That would be pretty sky. Then I'm going to grab my little stir brush, and my stir brush is an old paintbrush that's pretty well worn out, but they work so nicely to stir up paint. Right now I'm just going to get that white paint, added some water to it. A lot of times the paint that comes out of the bottles are a little on the thick side, so just add a tad bit of water. Just so it moves smoothly on your surface. All right, now we got that strong blue going on there. We're going to add a little water to it. We want about the same consistency as the white. Because I'm just going to barely touch that blue to make that sky. You know what? Let's add just a touch of yellow. Now when you're doing a sky and you mix your yellow and blue together, you're going to get green. So what I try to do is when I'm messing it with an area, you know, painting the white and then doing a little blue, then I'll touch the yellow pretty much in a separate section of the sky and blend it out nicely with the white, just so I don't turn it into green. Just a little bit of yellow, we don't need much. All right, now I'm gonna take that 1-inch brush, make sure it's damp, wipe it off. You wanna make sure you don't have any water on the silver part. And I'm gonna turn my work just a little sideways because my plan is to get the sky going probably about 4th way down. So grabbing the white, all I'm doing is loading up my brush. And of course, keep in mind, you only want paint going about halfway up that brush. And we're just gonna do light strokes all the way across the top. Just back and forth, that's all I'm doing, back and forth. About a 4th way down, grab a little bit more white. Now let's just taking just the corner of my brush and touching that blue. I don't want a whole lot on there. While the paint is still wet, damp your brush. And just move that across. Grabbing a little bit of yellow on the opposite corner. We'll put a little bit right about there. I'm gonna rinse my brush off real quick. Dry it off. And the brush is damp, so we'll just put just a smidge of yellow up there. There we go. Adding a little bit more white down through here. Because even if I go further where the ocean starts, you know, when we pass the horizon line, that's okay. We'll make that difference here in a minute. Grab just a tad bit of the blue and just streak that across. To get that to move even better, I'm going to rinse my brush, wipe it off good. We want to make sure that it's damp. And just cross over it back and forth. Now if you get a little too much of that blue on there, just grab a little bit more white and just lightly go over it. And it'll make it faint or disappear if you keep adding more white. It's up to you. Slow and easy, back and forth. Let's see what we've got here. I had a little bit of a stop and start brush mark right here. So I dampened my brush because the paint hasn't quite dried yet. And I'm just gonna go over that little mark so it disappears. All right, let's give a little bit more blue. Just to give it a little bit of interest. We'll darken that area right through there. Take it right on across. Wet your brush, wipe it off, and let's soften that up a little bit by going back and forth. Because we're going to add some clouds in here, just a little bit. So we do need some definition of color. Straighten these lines that I've got going just a little bit so when I do my horizon, all I'm doing is going across with a damp brush. Here we go. We got a smidge of yellow going on up there. Let's see if we want to add just a smidge more. Corner of my brush, just grab a little bit of that yellow. Just short little strokes going on here. Grab a little bit of that white with my damp brush. I'm just going to go over that just slightly, just to soften it up some. Let's see here. All right. Now while that's drying, let's go ahead and put our horizon in. And you can do this with a liner brush, or you can do it with your 1-inch, what is called a 1-inch wash brush, and make your line right across. I'm going to use my liner brush, grab a little bit of that dark blue, and just eyeballing it here. I need to come up just a smidge. When I want to try to do something straight, I usually just don't go straight across. I will take and just do short little strokes. And then if I'm off kilter a little, then I can fix it with the background color. Yeah, I would think I'm off kilter a little bit. All right, happy mistake. Let's go in there with a little bit of white. We just make that disappear. Look how that works. Just kind of ends up a little bit of white, a little bit of water, and that's gone. Let me grab my ruler. This probably makes a little bit more sense to use it. But see, I've got 2 dots up there, 2 holes at the top of my little round board here, and that's kind of what I'm looking at as to be the top part of it. All I'm doing is straightening out a little bit more. I don't want to have any stop and start brush marks. So straightening that out a little bit. I'll come in here and just lay my ruler about where it's not so wet. Actually, I need to go up a little bit further. All right, let's say about right there. This is a good time if you want to use your ruler to get your horizon line fairly straight, and that you can stand up and look at it, and it usually is a telltale sign if you got it straight enough. All right, grabbing my liner brush. Let's do that again. I'm just going to make quick little strokes here where my liner brush is touching my ruler. That just gives me a little bit better of a horizon line. There we go. Now, using that #1 wash brush, as I'm trying to say wash instead of wash. And while that's still damp, I'm just going to come right up underneath it using the very top of the brush, the hairs, and just barely touch to break that up. All the way down. Rinsing my brush. And going over it one more time before it dries. All right, I'm gonna go at the opposite side and try to catch a little bit of that, those little marks, using my damp brush. Just smoothing out very slowly my horizon line. Okay, that's working. I'll go over the whole thing with a damp brush and just soften it up just a little bit. Don't want to quite lose it. Looking at it from afar. All right, that's not bad. Not bad. Okay, now we got a little bit of the ocean's gonna show up here before we get to the waves. And while the sky is still drying before we go back, once it's dry, we'll go back and put some clouds in. All right, right underneath here, we're going to do, I'm gonna add just a smidge of green to my palette. We're gonna water that down using a little bit of water that's on my stir brush. Have that nice and wet. We may just grab a little touch of that while we're doing that ocean water. Now, I have seen elaborate ocean paintings. Gorgeous, gorgeous. I've only probably done one in my lifetime of painting. And it can just get very elaborate. Straighten that line up just a little bit so it agrees with my horizon line. Okay. All right, let's see, we're straight on there. Now coming underneath the horizon line, let's take a little bit of white and just slow down your strokes. Again, I'm just using the very edge of the brush, the bristles, bringing in some white there, right next to that line. We're going to grab some blue. A little smidge of green. Go back into your white again. And we're just going to do light little strokes all the way across. Don't want to lose our horizon line. Grab a little bit more white. Let's break up that section I've got going on here. All I'm trying to do is define a little bit more of that horizon line I've got going on. I'm going to come at it a different direction and just barely touch this right here because it's still wet, just to kind of make that disappear just a smidge. Just using my damp brush and going over it just a little bit. Grabbing a little bit more white, going over the whole surface where we started putting in the ocean line, or the ocean water, excuse me. Grab a little bit more blue. And because my board is round and it is a small one, it really depends on what project board you have chosen or canvas. You might have to work it a little bit faster than when I'm having to do mine, because my board is a little small. Grabbing just a smidge of that green. Let's put some in there. All the way across. A little bit of blue. We're going to take it all the way down. See if I'm straight on there. And we're already into the shoreline here, into the beach. But that's okay, because we're going to add more white when we let that dry a little bit. All right, take a look at it. See, I've got some start and stop paint marks there, brush marks there, so I'm just going to go over it really lightly. We need to darken. I've got a little too much white right here next to the horizon line. I need that to be a little bit darker. Let's see if I take my liner brush and a little bit of blue, a little bit of white. Let's see if we can get right up next to that horizon line and make that white disappear. And if you had a sunset going on here, that would be okay. All right, we're making that go away just a little bit. Taking the 1-inch wash brush, going over what I just did. Okay, we need to let that dry a little bit. We're going to start adding some waves in there. All right, I think our sky is nice and dry. Now I'm going to grab my, what I call, they call it a filbert filbert brush. This big old brush. It's got a long handle. You don't have to have the long handles. But when I was doing canvases on easels, that long handle just helped. Okay, it's a nice big thick brush and it does wonders for clouds and for blending. So I'm gonna dampen the brush, wipe it off, and you could use like one of your dancing brushes or blender brushes to add your clouds in if you have that on hand. If you use your nice round brush to pounce with, you'll lose eventually, it'll break down and you'll lose the nice shape of that round brush. So any of your pouncing or blending or dancing, you want to stick with the same brush. Like for instance, this one's a little bit too small, but it's a great blending brush. But for this surface up here, it's a little small. You could still do clouds. You just have to work them a little bit longer than what I have to with this large filbert brush. Grabbing a little bit of white, we're just going to pounce on a little bit of clouds. And really, you kind of get that feel of up and down, kind of a mountain range, where you're up and down and blend. And then wiping my brush off, I'm gonna tap underneath. I wanna keep that nice strong ridge of white cloud, but underneath that ridge, I'm gonna lightly, with a damp brush, smooth it out a little bit. Just lightly go off, smoothing it out. Now, if it's still too strong, you don't like that, you know, let's say you want to take a little bit more away, wet your brush again. Rinse your brush real good. And then, of course, it'll be wet. And then dry it off. And then just work that area a little bit more before it dries. I've got a glare, so let me take a look here. All right, that's working. Grab a little bit more white paint. I'm gonna come back in a little bit more over in this area by the yellow. Rinse your brush and just tap underneath that cloud line just to fade it out a little bit. I like this strong white going through here. I think I'm gonna add a little bit more of the strong white right in this direction. So I'm running out of white paint, so I'm gonna put a little bit more white paint on my palette. You don't have to water it down if you're doing clouds. You can if you want to. I barely touch my brush in the white paint, and I'm just going to touch the very top of that cloud. And work my way off the surface I'm working on. Alright, wiping my brush, rinsing it off just a little bit, drying it. I'm just going to touch right underneath that strong white cloud, just to give it a little something. Yep. I'll turn my project a little bit because I want to get over here on this side. Grabbing a little bit of that white paint, I'm going to put a little bit more of a cloud effect up here. Rinse your brush, wipe it off, make sure you don't have any dripping water, and then just barely touch underneath that strong white. Just tapping, that's all I'm doing. Just tapping, guys. Light little taps. I'm liking that strong white color. Now you can, if I don't have one on hand right now, but they're called fan brushes. If you get a fan brush, you can dampen your fan brush, and you can just, right where you put that extra white, you can do a little flip with your hand, and it will cause that cloud to just like spray out, which is very cool looking. All right. The ocean is pretty well dry. So we're going to do pretty much the same thing like we did with the horizon, with a decent wave coming in with nothing but kind of a pure white all the way across. So I'm going to use my smaller brush, my blending brush. I could use my filbert, but it would give me a little bit too wide of a wave that I'm looking for. So using my little, I want to say this is a 3 or 4, but it's worn off. And it is a Royal Nickel Clear Choice brush, and they are excellent brushes. But I can't see the number on it, so I want to assume this is probably a good 3 or 4 scruffy brush. Grabbing a little bit of that white. I'm going to turn my project so I can get it semi-straight. And I'm going to come in here and just do a little bit of tapping. Just tapping all the way across. And you can move up and down just ever so slightly. Again, you kind of think of a mountain range. Now before it dries, I'm going to take that damp wash brush. I'm going to come right up underneath it and just smooth it out. And if you get a little bit of streaks with that, that's perfect. Just a little bit of streaks coming up underneath those waves. Grab a little bit more white paint on my dancing brush. And the reason I've got this project turned sideways, kind of helps when I'm looking at the horizon that I'm getting this wave a little straight. In this case, for whatever reason, I feel like the wave needs to be fairly straight going across. And before anything dries, or before it dries, you're taking your damp wash brush, same thing you did with the clouds, just come up underneath. I'm trying not to touch the ridge of white. Just come up underneath there and pull it out just a little bit, just by touching with a damp brush. See, there's a lot of white there, so I'll pull that out and let that streak a little bit. And this just takes a little practice, guys. Dancing that off, using my wash brush. Let some of those streaks come out there. Kind of gives you that feel of the foam from the waves. Breaking that up just a little bit right there. Okay, starting to look like a wave, just a little bit. All I'm doing is trying to break up some of that while it's still wet. But now see, it's strong white right here, which looks to me more of a wave. This area here is already starting to get very dry. And if I wasn't happy with this little bit of a wave, then I could just go back with my blue, a little touch of green and white, and put the ocean back in again. And then you practice the waves, do it again. Using the dancing brush, I'm gonna add just a little bit more white, just here and there. Using the wash brush, how many times have I gotta say that today? And with a damp brush, all I'm doing is little short streaks, just to move that a little bit. Kind of ends up looking like the foam a little bit. Now, to make that even stronger, I could go in there to kind of give you that feel of darkness or shadow area underneath the wave. Grab a little bit of that blue on your scruffy brush, but keep your wash brush rinsed and damp. And of course, dry it off, because you're gonna have to blend it pretty quick. So right underneath the wave, I'm gonna grab and put a little bit more of the dark in just small sections. Using the wash brush, I'm gonna move that a little bit. Rinse my brush off. And just move it ever so slightly, so it just kind of gives it that feel that there's some depth there. And you can even streak that out a little bit like we did the white. Let's grab a little bit, put a little bit of that dark blue but down here. And let's move that ever so slightly. Using the corner of my brush, not taking away from the line of foam from the wave. See, you can even go up in there just a little bit. Kind of gives that illusion of a wave going on there. Now, my damp brush, I'm coming in here and just kind of wiping some of that back a little bit. Just lightly brush it off. Okay. All right, let's do just a little bit more in this section here, because we're heading for the beach. Yes, wouldn't that be nice right now? We're gonna head for the beach, but we're gonna add a little bit more white through here because it is heading to the beach line. So grabbing my rinsed off dancing brush, grab a little bit of that white, and this area here is still damp from all the messing around, and that's good. So grab a little bit of white on your dancing brush, and I want to do a little bit more white through here. Just short little strokes. Don't want to lose that dark blue shadow area by that wave. Breaking it up some. Kind of get that feel of that wave is being pushed back a bit. Let's see if we add a little bit more down here. Little short strokes. Very similar to what we did when we were building that sunflower on the petals. Little short strokes across to highlight it. We need the same, a little bit more white down here. Just a little bit. So much easier to take a little bit off than a whole lot off. Oh. Yeah, I won't share that thought. Anyway, excuse me. Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. I think that's giving me that look I'm going for. You can still see the ocean, the greens and the blues. You got a little bit of strong white going on there, and that's okay. Just playing with it till you're happy with it. Yeah.